The moment I stepped into that towering glass office building, I knew I was out of my league. What I didn't know was that the cold, intimidating man who barely looked up from his desk during my interview would become the person who changed everything. If you've ever felt like life was pushing you to your breaking point, only to discover it was actually pushing you toward your destiny, stay with me. This story might just give you the hope you need today. If you're enjoying this journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us that sometimes our darkest moments lead to the brightest futures. My hands trembled as I smoothed down my only decent blouse, thrift store find, $7.99. The receptionist's pitying glance told me everything I needed to know about how out of place I looked in the gleaming headquarters of Blackwood Enterprises. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now," she said, her voice carrying a note of surprise, as if she couldn't believe someone like me had made it this far. I needed this job. Not wanted, needed. The eviction notice taped to my apartment door that morning had made that crystal clear. 3 months behind on rent, my student loans in default, and my younger sister's college tuition payment looming. The ad had said, "Live-in nanny, generous compensation," and I'd applied without a second thought. The man behind the massive ebony desk didn't stand when I entered. He didn't even look up from the document he was signing. "You're Emma Collins." Not a question. His voice was deep, controlled, with an edge that suggested he wasn't accustomed to wasting time. "Yes, sir." I clutched my worn portfolio containing my teaching degree and references from the preschool that had closed down last month, leaving me unemployed. "You have no experience as a nanny." Again, not a question. "I have a degree in early childhood education and 4 years of classroom experience with children ages 3 to 6, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm a quick learner, Anne." "Why do you want this position?" He finally looked up, and I nearly gasped. His eyes were startlingly blue against his olive skin, framed by dark brows that drew together in perpetual scrutiny. He couldn't have been more than 35, but authority radiated from him like heat from a furnace. The practiced answer died on my lips. Something about his direct gaze made lying impossible. "I need the money," I admitted. "But I also love children, and I'm good with them. That part isn't just about the paycheck." A flicker of something, surprise, maybe, crossed his face before the mask of indifference returned. "My daughter is 5. Her mother is no longer in the picture. I work unpredictable hours. The live-in arrangement is non-negotiable." His words were clipped, efficient. The previous 3 nannies lasted less than a month each. My heart sank. "May I ask why?" "They found the environment challenging." Translation: they found him challenging. I was beginning to understand why. "When can you start?" he asked abruptly. I blinked. "You're offering me the job? Just like that?" "Ms. Collins, I don't have time for extended interviews and personality assessments. My daughter liked your photograph from your application. That's more input than I usually get from her about potential caregivers. The position is yours if you want it." His daughter had seen my photo? Had input? This wasn't how I'd imagined this interview going. "I can start immediately," I said, before he could change his mind. "Good. Mrs. Winters will handle the paperwork and show you to the penthouse." He returned to his document, dismissing me without another word. As I followed the elegant housekeeper to the private elevator, I wondered what I'd gotten myself into. The salary he'd offered was more than triple what I'd made teaching. There had to be a catch. The catch, as it turned out, had pigtails and a missing front tooth. "Are you my new nanny?" The little girl standing in the penthouse foyer wore a princess dress over jeans and had what appeared to be marker drawings up and down her arms. "Lily, this is Miss Collins," Mrs. Winters said. "And yes, she's going to be taking care of you now." Lily tilted her head, studying me with the same penetrating blue eyes as her father. "The others didn't stay." "I'm not the others," I said, kneeling to her level. "I'm Emma." My daddy doesn't like when people don't do what they promised, she informed me solemnly. He fired a man yesterday because he lied. Mrs. Winters cleared her throat. Lily, why don't you show Ms. Collins your room while I prepare her quarters? As Lily dragged me down the hallway, chattering about her stuffed animal collection, I caught a glimpse of a photograph on the wall, a younger version of Mr. Blackwood with his arm around a beautiful woman, both of them smiling. It was the only personal touch I'd seen in the otherwise minimalist space. That's my mommy, Lily said, following my gaze. She's in heaven now. My heart constricted. I'm sorry, Lily. She shrugged with the peculiar resilience of children. Daddy doesn't like to talk about her. He gets sad. Suddenly, the cold demeanor made more sense. This wasn't just a busy executive needing childcare. This was a widower trying to raise a daughter alone while running an empire. That first week was a crash course in the complex world of Alexander Blackwood and his daughter. He left before dawn and returned after Lily was asleep most nights. When he was home, he was distracted, taking calls and answering emails. Lily clearly adored him but had learned not to expect much of his attention. I established a routine for Lily: breakfast together, educational activities in the morning, outings in the afternoon, reading before bed. She was bright, curious, and starved for consistent care. By the end of the week, she was showing me her secret hiding places and telling me about the nightmares that sometimes woke her. It was during one of those nightmares, late on my 9th night in the penthouse, that everything changed. Lily's scream cut through the darkness. I rushed to her room, finding her tangled in her sheets, sobbing about monsters. As I gathered her into my arms, murmuring reassurances, the door flew open. Alexander stood there, hair disheveled, wearing only pajama bottoms, his chest bare and his expression frantic. What happened? He demanded. Just a nightmare, I said softly, still rocking Lily. She's okay. He crossed the room in 3 strides, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily Bug, you're safe, he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. Lily reached for him, and he pulled her into his lap without hesitation. Over her head, his eyes met mine, filled with a vulnerability that transformed his face. Thank you, he mouthed. I nodded and stood to leave, but Lily's small voice stopped me. Emma stays too, she insisted, grabbing my hand. Alexander hesitated, then shifted to make room beside them on the bed. I sat awkwardly, hyper-aware of his proximity as we both comforted Lily until she drifted back to sleep. You're good with her, he said quietly as we tiptoed out of her room. She makes it easy, I replied. She's an amazing kid. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking exhausted rather than intimidating. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, he admitted. Before Catherine died, she handled everything. I was always working. You're doing better than you think, I said. Lily adores you. He gave a humorless laugh. She deserves more than a father who's only half present. Then be more present, I suggested, then immediately regretted my boldness. Instead of anger, though, his expression turned thoughtful. Perhaps you're right, Miss Collins. Emma, I corrected. If we're going to be raising your daughter together, you should probably use my first name. Something flickered in his eyes. Emma, he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. Good night, Emma. After that night, small changes began. Alexander started coming home for dinner twice a week. He asked about Lily's day, about her progress, about her interests. He began joining us for bedtime stories when he could. And he started seeing me, really seeing me. Asking my opinion on Lily's education, listening when I suggested she might benefit from more socialization with children her age. Our conversations, initially brief and functional, grew longer, more personal. I learned he'd built his company from nothing after growing up in foster care. He told me about meeting Catherine in college, how they'd been partners in everything until cancer took her 3 years ago. I shared stories of raising my sister after our parents died, of my dreams of opening my own preschool someday. 2 months into my employment, I realized I was falling for him, this complex man who could be ruthlessly efficient in one moment and tenderly patient with his daughter the next. It was unprofessional, inappropriate, and completely hopeless. He was my employer, from a different world entirely. Then came the gallery opening. Alexander's company was sponsoring a charity art exhibition, and his attendance was mandatory. "I need you to come with me," he said one morning over the breakfast I'd prepared. "Mrs. Winters will stay with Lily." Me? I nearly dropped the orange juice. Why? Because the artist is featuring educational pieces, and I'd value your professional opinion. His tone was casual, but something in his expression made my pulse quicken. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that," I admitted. He waved away my concern. "There's a personal shopper waiting for you downstairs. Consider it a work expense." The dress the shopper helped me select was midnight blue, simple but elegant. When Alexander saw me that evening, he stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening slightly. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice lower than usual. At the gallery, I expected to be introduced as Lily's nanny. Instead, Alexander kept his hand at the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd, introducing me as Emma Collins, an early childhood education expert consulting on my daughter's development. As we discussed the artwork, his colleagues seemed surprised by his deference to my opinions. One woman raised an eyebrow when he laughed at something I said. Apparently, Alexander Blackwood rarely laughed in public. "You're full of surprises," I told him as we sipped champagne in a quiet corner. "So are you," he replied. "You've changed things, Emma. In my home. In Lily." He paused. "In me." Before I could respond, his phone rang. The call was brief, his expression darkening with each second. "We need to go," he said tersely. "There's been a security breach at the company. Sensitive information compromised." The drive back was tense, Alexander making calls, his CEO persona firmly back in place. At the penthouse, he apologized curtly before disappearing into his home office. The next morning, the news was everywhere. Blackwood Enterprises had been hacked, with rumors of an inside job. Alexander didn't come home that night, or the next. When he finally returned, the cold, distant man from my interview was back, barely acknowledging my presence. Lily noticed too. "Daddy's mad again," she whispered one night as I tucked her in. "Is he going to make you leave like the others?" "No, sweetheart," I assured her, hoping it was true. "I'm not going anywhere." But the wall between Alexander and me seemed insurmountable. He worked later, spoke less, the brief connection we'd formed apparently severed by whatever crisis he was facing. Then came the article. A tabloid piece suggesting Alexander Blackwood was having an inappropriate relationship with his daughter's nanny. There was a blurry photo of us at the gallery, his hand on my back, both of us smiling. I found it on the kitchen counter that morning, placed there deliberately. My stomach dropped. "Is this why you've been avoiding me?" I asked when he emerged from his office. "Some trashy gossip piece?" "It's not about the article," he said flatly. "It's about boundaries I should never have crossed." "What boundaries?" "Treating me like a human being? Having a conversation? You work for me, Emma. You care for my daughter. That's the extent of our relationship." The words stung more than they should have. Right. I forgot my place. "It won't happen again, Mr. Blackwood." I turned to leave, blinking back tears. "Emma, wait." His voice stopped me. The security breach, the information that was stolen included personal details. About me, about Lily. About you. I turned back. "Me? Why would anyone care about information on your nanny?" "Because someone is trying to find my vulnerabilities." He ran a hand over his face. And they've apparently identified you as one. The implication hung in the air between us. So you've been pushing me away to, what? Protect me? To protect all of us, he said. The last time I let someone get close to me after Catherine, it ended with corporate espionage and a broken engagement. I can't risk Lily getting hurt again. Or you. Understanding dawned. You think I could be involved somehow? Pain flashed across his face. No. But I thought distance was safer than the alternative. Which is? Admitting that I'm falling in love with you, he said quietly. And that it terrifies me. The confession hung between us, changing everything and nothing at once. Alexander. The penthouse alarm blared suddenly, red lights flashing. Alexander moved instantly, pulling me toward his office. Security breach, he said grimly. Someone's in the building. He pressed his palm to a hidden scanner, revealing a panic room I hadn't known existed. Get Lily, he ordered, already moving to the security monitors. I ran to her room, scooping her from her bed. Her eyes flew open, frightened by the alarms. It's okay, sweetheart, I soothed, carrying her to the panic room. Just a drill. But Alexander's expression told me it was far from a drill. On the monitors, masked figures moved through the lower floors of the building. Corporate rivals? I asked, holding Lily close. He shook his head. Worse. The man behind the hack is Catherine's brother. He blamed me for her death, said I didn't get her the right treatments, that I was too busy with the company to save her. He's been systematically trying to destroy everything I care about. And now he's here, I whispered. Alexander nodded grimly. Stay with Lily. No matter what happens, keep her safe. What are you going to do? He checked something on his phone. Security is 4 minutes out. I'm going to make sure they don't reach this floor. That's insane. You can't go out there. I won't let him threaten my family. His eyes held mine. Either of you. Before I could stop him, he was gone, the panic room door sealing behind him. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Lily clung to me, whimpering as we watched the security feeds. Alexander had disabled the elevator to the penthouse, but 2 men were in the stairwell, ascending. Then Alexander appeared on the feed, confronting them. I couldn't hear the exchange, but I saw the larger man lunge. Alexander fought with unexpected skill, but he was outnumbered. When security finally arrived, subduing the intruders, Alexander was bleeding from a cut above his eye. I released the breath I'd been holding. Hours later, after police statements and security sweeps, after Lily had finally fallen back asleep in her bed, I found Alexander on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. You could have been killed, I said quietly. They weren't here to kill me. Just to take what matters most. He turned to face me. To take Lily. To take you. Why me? Because Catherine's brother has been watching. He saw what I was trying not to see, that you've become essential. To Lily. To me. He stepped closer, his hand gently touching my cheek. I've spent 3 years shutting everyone out, convinced that was the only way to protect what I have left. But watching you with Lily, seeing how you've brought light back into this home. I realized I've been wrong. About what? My voice was barely audible. About thinking I had to choose between being a good father and opening my heart again. About believing vulnerability was weakness. His thumb traced my lower lip. About you. When he kissed me, it felt like coming home, like all the broken pieces of both our lives might somehow fit together into something stronger, something beautiful. 6 months later, Lily was the flower girl at our wedding, proudly telling everyone how she had picked me from my picture because I had kind eyes like her mommy. Alexander's company launched a foundation in Catherine's name, funding cancer research and support for families affected by the disease. And I opened the preschool I'd always dreamed of, with Alexander's support but using my own teaching experience and vision. We named it Catherine's Garden, a place where children like Lily could grow and thrive. Life wasn't perfect. Alexander still worked too much sometimes. I still worried about overstepping as Lily's stepmother. We argued, we compromised, we learned. But every night, when the three of us sat together for dinner or bedtime stories, I marveled at how my desperate need for a job had led me to the family I never knew I was looking for. The cold, intimidating billionaire turned out to be a man carrying too many burdens alone. The struggling teacher found strength she didn't know she had. And a little girl who just wanted her father to be happy again somehow orchestrated it all. Sometimes the things we think we want, money, security, success, are just pathways to what we truly need: connection, purpose, love. My journey from broke teacher to billionaire's wife isn't a fairy tale. It's messier, more complicated, and infinitely more real. If you're facing your own impossible situation right now, remember my story. Sometimes life's greatest challenges are actually doorways to our greatest blessings. Sometimes the coldest hearts are just the ones most afraid to be broken again. And sometimes, the family you're meant to have is waiting where you least expect to find it. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about how life's darkest moments can lead to unexpected light. Remember, your own story isn't over yet. Sometimes the best chapter is the one you haven't reached. The end.